Hello, I am Suzanne Hilser-Wiles, President of GG&A, and I am delighted to welcome you this morning to this latest edition of our Thought Leadership Series. If you have a question during the presentation, please submit it via the Q&A button at the bottom or top of your screen. Unfortunately, we won't have time to answer questions during the session, but we will post answers to your questions on our website in the coming days. So this webinar was inspired by GG&A's Playbook on Stewardship, which we published last month and has already been downloaded hundreds and hundreds of times. We know that this is a topic that is of acute interest to those of you on the call and our clients around the world. If you haven't yet downloaded our Stewardship Playbook, please go to the chat button and there is a link to do so. If you don't want to do it during the course of this presentation, you can also find it on GG&A's website following our discussion. So in the intro to that stewardship playbook, I make the observation about the importance of stewardship and impact to donors in deciding when and where to what they are going to give their philanthropic support, and also the huge disconnect that we often see from clients between how well an institution believes it is stewarding its donors and then how well donors feel stewarded. Despite this gap and the importance of understanding impact in influencing future gifts, stewardship is too often an area that is cut quickly and deeply when institutions have to think in a new way about budgets. So we thought it would be helpful to dive into both what are we seeing in the field and what are some of the questions that you all should be asking about how to invest wisely in stewardship going forward. So I am joined today by three of my wonderful GG&A colleagues, and I will introduce them as we go through questions together. So first, I'm going to talk to Megan Collier, Consulting Associate, and one of the people who drives our survey lab. Megan has been with the firm for 3 years and has done surveys for a wide variety of clients, and a lot of them really focused on this issue of stewardship. How well are we doing communicating and impacting our donors relative to their excitement and enthusiasm to give again? So Megan, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And you are still muted. I think you might know that, but just in case. So Megan is joining us from her home in West Philadelphia. So Megan, surveys have been a powerful tool in learning what donors really think about the ways they are being stewarded. Can you share with us some insights that clients have gained and how they've actually used this to affect their program going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Suzanne, and great to be here today. So surveys are such a great way to hear really directly from your constituents, not just those louder voices at an institution that kind of already have your ear, but hearing from your mid-level donors, hearing from your low-level donors, how do they feel about their relationship with the institution? And as you mentioned, surveys can really help to kind of challenge or affirm some of those closely held beliefs at an institution to really gather tangible data and determine how to move forward. So the survey team developed a tool to help donors weigh in on stewardship that we call our donor experience scorecard that you see here. And the idea behind this survey, it's modeled after a lot of customer experience surveys. So when you were traveling more regularly, you'd get off a plane and get an email that asks, how was your experience? Would you fly with us again? And so on. So our survey asks recent donors 10 questions about their donor experience to really get a pulse on what an institution's donors are thinking and have data to see what's working, what's not working. So we know that retention is very key. So in this slide, you see the results from that scorecard survey. And there's a lot of data here, but I'll give a quick breakdown just to kind of help orient everyone. So the first column were the metrics here. These are the kind of 10 questions that we asked about donor experience and stewardship. The second column, you see the percentage of all survey respondents overall who answered high on any of these metrics. And the different colors associated with the scores essentially reflect how good the client is doing with their donors. So the green circles, those mean donors said the institution was doing an excellent job. The yellow circles, they're doing a fair job. And then the red circles are the poor scores. So where the institution could really be improving. And this client has a fair score kind of overall of 74. So this says to me that they're doing okay with some room for improvements. And then in the third and fourth columns here, we break the responses down by giving level. So for this institution, we look at donors who've given $1,000 or more, and then lower level donors of the institution, so those giving less than $1,000. And then the particular story here, so what this client really learned from their donors. First, donors said this institution is really excellent at the mechanical components of the donor experience. So donors across giving levels feel really positively about accurate receiving, the process of making a gift. Donors feel really satisfied with gift communications. 82.9% kind of answer highly on that particular metric. And this says to me that this client is really successfully thanking their donors. The second big takeaway, donors having given $1,000 or more feel really positively. So the institution is doing really well among that particular group. So you see positive scores on most metrics. 81% of this 1K plus group says they're likely to give in the future. That's a really strong number. And 89% feel that their gift was used as intended. So it really indicates trust among this higher level group. On the flip side of this, the lower level donors are responding less positively. So that's the third big takeaway that I see from these results. This client learned that they really need to improve the experience of their lower level donors in several areas. So you see notably low scores about knowing who to contact about a gift. To me, what stands out as the biggest concern for this client, just 35% of donors say they understand the impact of a gift. That number's really low. And likely related to that, only half of that group say they're likely to give again in the future. So I think it really speaks to the need for greater personalization, building trust, strengthening engagement among this lower level group. And then I want to focus.
Megan, if I could just highlight what you just said there, because it's really important. As development officers, we talk about, the best indicator of a future gift is that you gave a gift. So this survey tool asks people, did the experience of making this gift make you more likely to give again? And I think that's really incredible takeaway for this client. We can't just thank people well. There's got to be more than it's easy to make a gift to get people really inspired to make their next gift.
Absolutely. And so you see 51% kind of having good experiences about impact. And then on the next slide, you see another key finding from this same survey, which Suzanne, I think really speaks to kind of what you were just noting there. We asked donors the key drivers to their decision to make a gift. And donors really answered that the top factor that motivates their giving is understanding impact. So 58% saying this really strongly motivates their giving to the institution. So it really shows that the client really realized that gap between the importance of impact among their donor base and then how well they were imparting this and then communicating that to them. So really it showed that it was crucial to strengthen impact communications, notably for that lower level group, but also kind of strengthen that among their higher level donors as well. So kind of just to sum up, the client heard really directly from their donor base, the areas where they could strengthen their pipeline, their stewardship, and kind of gain data on kind of how to move forward best with those folks.
That's great. And, two other things I would highlight, Megan, that you just brought up. First of all, understanding the impact of my gift, that is almost always the number one reason that people give that's, important to them, that inspires them. And we know that that is true, the more capacity the donor has. This comes across in high net worth individual surveys, philanthropic support over and over and over again. And for, your annual donor, it doesn't have to be about how you spend every dollar, every euro. It really is about what is this doing for the institution? What does philanthropy do for the institution? The other really great thing, and it was a little less true of this particular client, since we've talked about this client, but very true of some others, is there's some real myth busting that happens here. We did for one of our Ivy League clients a survey, and they were very focused on giving circles as a way to steward their donors in a very complex system. And really what we found out when we surveyed their donors, people liked that belonging to one, they liked that feeling of belonging, but they actually couldn't even name the circle they were part of. right? So the complexity of the system, which was causing a lot of work for the client, wasn't really adding value for the donors, but belonging to something really did. So I think, Megan and the Survey Lab team have done a really great job of helping our clients think about, okay, how do you myth bust some of that? What are these closely held beliefs, and are they actually true for our donors? And that's been, I think, helped our clients come up with some very specific solutions to their own problems. So thank you. And it's hard to argue when the donors have told them yourself, and you get this great bar chart.
Yes, absolutely.
So on this issue of impact and lower level donors, I'm going to turn to our colleague, Ann Cohn. Ann is a consulting associate who's been with GGNA for 3 years. She's worked with a lot of clients, particularly clients in the arts and universities that are doing some look at what happens next after a campaign. How do we grow some of those leadership annual giving programs in particular? So, and we know that understanding impact is critical to donors at all levels. We just saw that. How do you see institutions demonstrating impact for annual donors as well as major donors?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. This is really a great topic. We've seen institutions thinking about this in a really deep way as understanding the impact of their giving has become critical really to all donors. So there's a great example of this at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. They've created a donor impact report for all donors at all levels. It's a beautifully produced piece, it's online, and it allows donors to see the total impact of philanthropy. So the report focuses on the community and who the museum is reaching. And it's built around the statement, we're Philadelphia's art museum and there's something here for everyone. So really embracing that full community. They talk about access, so the increase to their Pay What You Wish program and free and discounted memberships to students and teachers and artists. And then they start to go a bit deeper. They interview 2 Philadelphia school students on their experiences with their programs, which are 100% free because of philanthropy. And then they talk about their digitization project, which is having international impact. So it's really showing the broad reach of the museum. So many different points. They also talk about the economic impact the museum is having on the city of Philadelphia. So generating tax revenue, tourism, creating jobs, really thinking about, this broad reach that philanthropy is supporting. And then the really important piece is they directly tie all of this to their current campaign. So they can see the results of the campaign and how it's impacting all of these different areas. The director closes by saying, the future is looking brighter than ever. We believe the museum is an increasingly dynamic place where people can come together to see the world and themselves anew through art. So this is an optimistic, inclusive, forward-looking message, and it makes everyone who's given a gift to the museum feel like they've been a part of these accomplishments. The report does this in several different ways, but it's really highlighting the breadth and the depth of the institution's successes and inspiring pride in what has been accomplished, and that there's excitement around the work that's still yet to be done through what the museum's doing through its programming and through its campaign. So really a comprehensive feeling about impact for all donors, which is a really great example of doing this.
Thanks so much, Ann. And I think a couple of things that I love about the example you use. So often in annual giving, we hear from folks, well, it's really easy for a food bank to say, for $70 a week, you can feed a family of 4, but it can be more challenging to do. So they didn't try and actually explain, here's how we spend your $50, your 70 euros, your 400 pounds. They actually told the story of the impact of philanthropy and tied it to some of their big vision around connecting in a deeper way with the city of Philadelphia. So I think it's a terrific example. You don't always have to report back about this is exactly how we'll spend your gift. It's your gift is part of this really important vision for the institution. I would definitely encourage people to check out their impact report. They've gotten terrific feedback on it. They started just a couple of years ago and it's available on their website. So Bob, I'm now going to turn to you. Bob Raymond is a Senior Vice President here at GG&A. He's been with us for over 4 years. Bob has a very long career in philanthropy, including at such prestigious institutions as the National Aquarium in Boston. He has lots of wonderful pictures of himself and his animal clients on our website and Instagram, so check it out. So Bob, with some of the traditional ways institutions steward donors now unavailable during COVID. So for instance, things like our scholarship lunches, exhibition openings, tours are either greatly limited or just not happening at all. How have you seen institutions pivot? And most importantly, as we're entering into hopefully a time when the world starts to reopen, what do you think they should be keeping as they enter back into the world, the normal world?
Thanks, Suzanne. This is an amazing time for stewardship, as you know. It's a lot of us think about cultivation in virtual times, but it's really important to look at stewardship because when you look up the definition of stewardship, it's preparing somebody for their next gift. So we want to make sure we're doing that well. And the COVID-19 pandemic has really forced us to look at that. And I wanted to highlight something that you wouldn't think could be done virtually. And one of our clients, Montgomery College in Maryland, has done it, a building dedication ceremony. Who knew? So one of the things that's so important about an in-person event like that is to recognize donors and make them feel great. But sometimes when you're putting these together, you've got speakers that can't attend because of geography and timing, et cetera, but Montgomery College was able to make this happen. They took a $1 million donation from a wonderful new donor to the institution, and they named their Student Services Center the Kimmy Dong Center. And because of the gift's significance, they wanted to make a big deal about it, and rightfully so. One of the things that they quickly discovered, to fulfill that stewardship commitment during COVID, they were going to have to pivot. So they immediately, instead of putting it off till post-COVID, decided to do it virtually. And they rallied their communications department to do a wonderful 35-minute video celebrating the gift, talking about impact, which we've just heard is so important, hearing from students how they will be impacted. It was really masterfully done. They also were able to include, referencing my point, both United States senators and 3 Congress members to really say why impact was so important and the student services and the role the community colleges are playing. So they pulled off a really magnificent event, and that was followed by a private party hosted by the president. So they were able to incorporate some intimacy and then some students who were participating in that follow-up private party. It really enabled the college to bring together a diverse group of students, faculty, and others, as well as major gift prospects, to see how they were well stewarded during these difficult times. Another example I want to bring up, given my fishy background, is the Florida Aquarium. They, as many organizations have realized, were not able to host their annual gala, and that was their biggest fundraiser. They decided they couldn't turn it into a virtual gala, and they were left with a number of major gala sponsors in place, but no gala. So what did they do? They pivoted. They happened to be celebrating, this is the Florida Aquarium in Tampa, their 25th anniversary. So they took a number of their lead gifts that were over $25,000 and created a 25 for 25 campaign. So they were able to turn some of those lead gifts and steward those gifts as lead donors to this transformative campaign for their 25th anniversary. And they were very much an event-centric fundraising organization. And this silver lining was able to turn them into a major gift forward organization. And they were really focused on bringing those 25,000 and above donors, giving them the stewardship and showing them as leaders in philanthropy to help celebrate the aquarium's 25th anniversary. My last example is international. It's from the Museum Kunst Westcosta outside of Hamburg in Germany. They are closed, doing as many other organizations are during COVID, but they went ahead with an exhibit opening. Now, many organizations are doing virtual exhibit openings, but one of the components of their exhibit opening is a painting that they are requesting donations so they can purchase for the permanent collection. So a lot of times you'll be able to see donors listed on a wall next to an important recent acquisition. They're able to update that though on an almost daily basis for all the people that are taking their 3D route through the museum, and not only able to steward the donors that have given towards that painting, but to provide an example for others. If you like your name here, you can do that. So even with the doors closed, we're providing some great virtual stewardship. So look for that silver lining in stewardship. That's our message out there. So thanks, Suzanne.
You know, it's interesting because we had a number of clients who were beginning to use in a much more regular way, sort of electronic recognition. And I think that the opportunity to update that much more frequently and to use something like a virtual event to drive people to, you know, do this now. There's an urgency. The impact is allowing us to buy this painting, but we can also acknowledge you very quickly is terrific. But one of the big things that we've been talking about at GGNA, and my colleagues on this call have heard me say this, I think one of the big failures of virtual events before was that they weren't really virtual events, right? We would invite our alumni or our patrons from all over the world to, you know, participate in something that was happening in a room by them watching through some sort of voyeuristic camera in the back. But what we have now are things that are really designed to be a virtual event. Bob's example of Montgomery College is a terrific one. There may be a component that we should do for a broader audience. There may be, you know, even the naming donor, they may have family, friends who live in other parts of the world that they would love to include. And then you can have a small intimate gathering in the building, maybe with the president. But certainly this allows us to showcase philanthropy, to celebrate these gifts, and to tell that story of impact to a much wider audience. We're also seeing then institutions using some of those videos, repurposing pieces of it for things like admissions and, you know, marketing their programs. So these are investments that are getting a lot of legs for institutions too, and they wouldn't have been created before because so much of this was focused on what happens in the room. So certainly I think thinking about what can we creatively do to make sure that these events, these special moments have as much of their own impact as possible is critical. So my final question, which I'm going to ask everybody, is to share with our listeners an example of one or two of the most effective things you've seen an institution do to steward a donor, maybe during this period, but maybe not. Anne, I'm going to start with you.
Great. Yeah, so this is actually an example of great stewardship that I personally received. I made a small gift to an emergency COVID fund at a theater that I used to work for. And that week I got a call from an employee in their costume shop to thank me. Now, I don't think she was prepared for my level of excitement to speak with her, because not only was I interested to hear how things were going at the theater, but I also wanted to hear more about her experience making these calls, because of course it's something we recommend to our clients all of the time. So she was able to tell me about how the institution was managing and how helpful that this was in really connecting her to the organization in a time where she wasn't really sure what her role was anymore. But this allowed her to feel productive, and it made her feel really good because, of course, the donors she spoke with were so enthusiastic about the theater. So it was a great reminder that everyone at an organization can play an important role in stewarding donors, and it's often a place that makes volunteers and staff feel really good about the institution.
Great, thank you, Anne. Megan, how about you?
Yeah, one of my favorite recent examples is from a nonprofit called Seeds of Caring, and their mission is to empower kids to create a kinder community. So they do this by designing opportunities to let them engage in service, volunteering projects, learning about social justice, and the like. And they sent their donors thank you notes and paintings from the kids who recently participated in the programs. So this really direct connection between the donors and the folks participating, and the messages were both a thank you, but importantly, the kids really communicated in their notes and artwork what they learned from participating. So what the programs really meant to them. So directly kind of connecting mission, impact, and then communicating that back to donors.
Great. Bob, how about you?
Well, I've got another personal example like Anne. They happen to be a client as well, the Rodale Institute, which are organic research facility in Pennsylvania, is very, I find we're very attuned to what was going on in the world and pivoted their on-site classes in Pennsylvania to virtual classes. Now I'm a weekend gardener and was kind of interested, but something really caught my eye. It was on home composting. And so many of us are finding homebound hobbies. Well, they were able to expose me to some very easy classes. So I am now a home composter and feel very good about not only my efforts, but I'm very much more connected to Rodale's connection, to listening to the needs, to giving us some tools to make the world a better place. And of course, I feel better about Rodale because of it. So.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. I will share two examples myself, not from when I worked in fundraising. I worked with the advisory committee of one of the programs, one of the schools in a conservatory, and it was a school of dance. And we were in an advisory committee meeting, and the dean mentioned that the dining hall closed before rehearsal ended. And that was a problem because the dancers didn't have access to the ice machine on campus. And of course, if you're a dancer and you are training to be a professional, you need ice at the end of the day for your aching joints. So one of the advisory committee members said, gosh, I'll buy you an ice machine. She gave them, I think it was a $10,000 gift. And then during the first few months that we had this ice machines, periodically the dancers would take pictures of icing themselves at the machine at the end of the day and just send them to her. And they were informal and they were silly, but they just made her feel great and really get to see the impact of that gift. The second, so a little less directly connected to the donor and the experience, I worked for an organization called Cancer Care, and we offered free support services for children who had a family member with cancer, frequently a parent. And they were wonderful services, but as part of that, young children would get a welcome pack, which was a bear wearing our little Cancer Care for Kids logo and coloring book around, dealing with cancer. And people really were so moved by this program. So people who gave over a certain amount to the program were considered to be a sponsor of one of these welcome kits, and they got to write a note. So they wrote a note to the family, not knowing who the family was, what the child's circumstance were, just about, basically, I hope you're doing well, thinking of you. And in some cases, this is why I did it. I was inspired by my son and the way he dealt with his diagnosis. My mom had cancer when I was a kid. And it was really meaningful for the donors, even though they didn't know exactly who the recipient would be, to feel that they were connected in that way to one of the children that was benefiting from their generosity. So lots of great ideas. We'd love to hear your great ideas, things that are really working for you right now or ever. Share them with us, please. Find us on LinkedIn, and let us know what stewardship things your institution has done. I want to thank my colleagues, Anne, Megan, and Bob, and the GG&A team that produces these webinars, and to all of you for spending this time with us today. Again, please send us your stewardship ideas or your questions via the Q&A button or our website. And Anne, Megan, Bob, and I all invite you to connect with us via LinkedIn and connect with the firm. And we look forward to seeing you on a future program. Thanks, everybody.